What, just focus on the budget, you think?
Yes.
Okay. So I did put this together based on December numbers and kind of extrapolated it up in column F with estimates, and then put together some preliminary numbers, and then Pete and I met with Natalie and Nate and just tweaked them a little bit. I know that the one number that's off by about $4,000 is the tax levy. I just did an estimate and he did the calculation. It was about 4,000 less, $4,033 something. So it'll be, but that's, you know, I didn't correct it on this because it just didn't seem worthwhile. And it's pretty close. I don't know if we just want to go through the different areas. That is assuming that we do the full tax levy. And I think that the reserve at the end is less than it was last year, primarily because expenses are up in the 4.8% range and the levy's up about 2.5, and that difference times the expenses, you know, does cut into that a little bit. But if we start with, I guess, the revenue, I mean, you can always adjust the levy. The grants, I think we decided that there is some uncertainty on whether or not we're going to get that grant again that we got for 12,191. So we didn't budget for that. Typically, we don't budget, although we got that 2 years in a row. And all other revenue, I think we increased the budget a little bit, just tried to be more realistic because typically we do run above the budget on that. So we want to maybe look at those numbers and see. Okay.
Of the revenue, the only one I can see changing in a predictable manner is book sale income. Is if we try to do big book sales a year plus having the ongoing bookstore, the number that we have in there for the 1,500 is just the stand-in bookstore. So you think that'll go up a bit with a book sale, but it's not sure how much.
What was that grant? 12,191 from? What do
So New York State Library,
Just New York State Library, right? Yeah, I don't believe we applied for it this year. That's what Natalie was telling me, but yeah, I think it's just New York State grant.
And just having come from Upper Hudson, the budget for the state is very much up in the air because of federal funding.
I guess one of the basic questions though, are we going to ask for the full tax? Are we going to, but we can do that every year, once we know that we are going to use that money for something. You know, for the past few years, we've always gone back and forth whether or not we need to add to the full, or should we drop a little bit lower? Or...
I would like to ask for the full tax cap. The number, of course, the biggest number that we have is gross payroll and health insurance. We, you know, normal organization will always have gaps in payroll where somebody resigns, we wait to hire a new person, somebody retires, that kind of thing. But payroll and health insurance are only going to go up. And with health insurance being unpredictable as well, I'm concerned about that one in the second half of the fiscal year being way high.
And that the budgeted number here for payroll, is that assuming full staffing?
Yes, that's if we fill all of our vacancies.
I thought there was still about 100,000 in vacancies in the number that Nate said.
There is, but we factored them in. This list of the vacancies.
Okay.
So that it's filled. And that also leaves us room in case, you know, not all of our staff take the full health insurance benefit, but we have to imagine that if we offer it, they might all take it.
So I guess towards the question of whether you ask for the full cap, it's like last year I was kind of opposed to going for the full cap. because We have some public image issues.
Yeah.
This year, I guess I'm a little more hesitant to say, well, yeah, we should kind of come it back. But right now in this budget, you know, after we tweak it, it'll change a little bit, but we have 117 in a quote reserve unquote. I guess it would be nice to say, you know, maybe 17,714 if that's for contingency type things, and 100,000 is for something. It would be nice if we finally implemented what Mike's been talking about since the beginning of time almost. And I just think it would, you know, I don't know, it would be reserves for deferred maintenance. That seems to be something that is coming up, you know, notwithstanding that we just had a building project, but there's still a lot of things open. And I guess it would just, in my mind, it would make sense and it would, well, yeah.
In terms of what that something could be, when we last had to repair the skylight, it was $100,000 in 2010. So that's a big chunk right there.
So 2.6% reserve on the budget on the revenue. So it's, library of this size, it's a relatively small reserve. He says, you know, one big item sums it all up. So,
Yeah.
And as we talked, you know, it's worth to the taxpayers. The average taxpayer, that full number is worth about $15.
Yeah, I know that, I did the calculations.
So it's not that big of an issue, to tell you the truth.
Now, I'm not sure a taxpayer would look at it as what it costs him as opposed to, you know, it's like 100,000 is a big dollar, even though it does get down.
I know,
It's like,
and they're looking out for the organization, not looking at, if we're not looking out for the taxpayer, we're looking out for the organization. And a 2.6% reserve on a budget of 4.7 million is de minimis. So,
Yeah.
So,
Again, I think, you know, assuming that's the number we end up with this in the ballpark of that 117, you know, it's not enormous, it's lower than we've had in recent years. You know, ideally, again, I think it'd be better if we were, you know, had a basis for that, you know, for you know, saying, yes, we have, you know, more concrete projections of our future costs and how much we ought to be stocking away for various defined purposes, but we're not quite there yet. But yeah, I think, you know, hopefully, you know, maybe in the next year, we'll get to that point where we can actually put some numbers behind it and say, well,
Is the skylight accounted for anywhere on the current budget?
It's not.
Oh.
We haven't received.
That's what I just didn't know if we were trying to make up for it in a particular area.
No.
you know, it could be that in the maintenance number, you know, it's a big maintenance number based upon what we did this year, but whether we're gonna do the same thing next year or some of that maintenance number includes that, but it would be some combination of that number plus the reserve that's gonna get used to hit the skylight.
So getting back to all other revenue, would anybody, should we add a little bit more for the book sale income or? I mean, right now we in total budgeted 34,450, which is, you know, it's a significant number higher than the budget. But so far we've had 25,000 for 6 months, so we think it'll be about 44,000. So, you know, we still have a little bit of cushion in it.
What is that?
So I like to keep looking at lower. I mean, because we don't plan for the book sales, but we don't know for sure of that.
And that's separate. Volunteer situation, there's a lot of other stuff we need to work out still, right? Or is it?
So we're good on volunteers. It's really, we're gonna, you know, April, the first book sale will be in this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's such a small number that, even if I said like, oh, we can double it, and I feel confident in that, but it's not making a huge difference in the overall budget.
So I'm fine with keeping it the lower end.
Then, I don't know if you've brought anything on gross payroll or not, but it's up 3.7%. I think the union increases were between 3.25% and 3.5%.
Yep. And then the NC ones are 3% as well.
Okay. So most of it is in that, and then I think there are positions that we have filled now that we didn't earlier in the year, so I think that our actual is trending fairly low because of the vacancies with human resources and
The custodial.
yeah, and maybe public relations as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, marketing. I think what we tried, so the fringe benefits at the bottom of the page. Health insurance, we trended up about 10%. I think that we're perhaps a little bit high on health insurance in the budget this year. I think that the range of health insurance increases, I mean, I've seen them as high as 15 with recent renewals.
We did our renewal in December, and the broker, all of our increases were 10 or 13%.
Yeah.
So we're expecting the same thing again.
It's gonna be high.
I don't know when it, or is it with it is with CDPHP, a lot of it.
All of our plans, yeah. We used to have one that was Empire, and no one used it, so we're on CPHP right now.
I think they're projecting right now 14 to 16% increase on CDP.
I guess it'll be interesting because I think management's kind of, it won't be a local plan. Yeah, I mean, they merged with Rochester or something, and I mean, from what I'm told, CDPHP will be like a brand, but that's a tough eventually. FICA is just a percentage of gross salary, basically, a little less than, I think, 7.65%, so it just floats with that.
Workers' comp, went up somewhat this year and we're holding it with that up level.
It was definitely, the actual's been running higher. Quite a bit over budget, I forget.
I'm actually not sure. I haven't dug into that one. I'm wondering if somebody can supply something to that budget. But yeah, unless it was all front loaded in the beginning of the year, it's going to drop off.
Yeah, that's what we could look at, although that's usually unemployment, but not with us. But we can look at the detail. I can now confidently say we can look at the detail of that.
Because you've done it.
I know how now, but
Or you think you put together these numbers, or did you rely on Jackie to put them together, or?
no, it's like I have the information from the actual I had everything basically. I have the actual because when I put together the financial statements. So the December 24 is the December financial statements. And I have the trend. And so I know like water, gets paid once a year and then there's very little. So there's certain seasonal things that we took into account. But Pete and I, for whatever reason, just decided at the time to just work together on it, which
Why we pay you guys to?
That's why we pay me and why I Big George.
isn't that much begging. It's pretty.
Did we get a new contract from the attorney? Why did that go up so much?
Yep, so that was based on, I believe their retainer went up at the beginning of this fiscal year, and then they charged us monthly. So it's broken out. I think it's a $1,600 payment every month. Does that sound correct, George?
We figured it was 25-ish or something like that for
For
the
total,
and then you knew that you had add-on services.
they do charge us for anything that's not covered by the retainer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How much do you think the retainer was?
I believe it was 25, because that was what we.
25, yeah, and I think we budgeted the extra.
The new retainer is 25,
I believe that's what that is.
so that would have a lot, because the old retainer was 15.
Really?
I can double check that.
Measuring how much we're using, last year was a sort of an aberration.
Yeah, that- 'cause-
On legal services, but,
Yeah,
and if it's going up that much, are we really using up that amount of, legal services?
we are, especially when we didn't have a human resources person, we relied on the attorney as a de facto human resources asset. So it will continue to trend down for things that are outside the retainer. They have not given us a renewal for this year yet. I think that was summer that they gave us the new contract.
We have to, the board has to approve it at the annual meeting in July.
Right.
I just, it seems like a relatively big jump for us hoping to get back down to not requiring the assistance of an attorney
Yeah.
as nearly as much. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah. No, I have not dug into the things that we've done that are not covered by the retainer, but we can get an itemized list of charges.
Are we not taking advantage of the cheap computers? Is that why that cost came back up, the refurbish?
Yeah, I don't think we've done that this year, the program that we were going to buy from Upper Hudson, right?
Yeah, because that is a 233.3% increase in the budget.
So there were some one-time costs I think came out of that for smart boards, but that's not the entire increase.
And smart boards you're planning to buy next year.
No, I don't think we're going to buy additional. Were we looking at this year's
So
cost?
I'm looking at the budget change from the current fiscal year that we're in. Like I'm looking at, like I like to look at column J and see where things have changed.
Mhm.
And last year's budget for the computer stuff, and I realized we went over, but if that was because of smart boards and now we're budgeting a lot,
Yeah, so I
is that necessary?
gotcha. Yeah, I believe the increase for the December 24 actual in column E was based on one-time costs. So we can probably, take that back down.
I mean, it's just a question. I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
suggesting you make an adjustment to it
Yeah,
necessarily.
I wouldn't drop it all the way down to last year's number of 6,000, but maybe the 2023 number of, around 9 or 10,000, I think is safer.
But check with IT or and just see, and we could look at what's in the 15 so far. Are people good on page 2? Well, you're down to almost the bottom. The auditor fees, I do want to look at. We don't have any recent history, so I've got to take the last year and sort of trend it up a little bit.
Chamber for this year was 20,000.
Oh, it was 20. Okay, maybe it had gone up last year from. Okay, so the coming quote is 20, the coming quote's 25.
No, I misspoke when I said it was 25. The contract that we're on is 20,000.
Okay.
And we haven't seen it yet.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe you could bring that down a little bit depending on, I don't know if there anything. We anticipate making this year. You know, West, I think somebody said it's gonna be the same.
They
They,
do want these.
they told us it was safe.
It hasn't been approved by the board, but I think they're trying to. Just out of curiosity, I'm sorry, I jumped to page 3. If you want to go back, I'm sorry.
What you want.
Okay. The marketing and advertising went up 50%, which I think is probably great. Is there a plan for utilizing that, or you just wanted to make those funds available?
That was it, right? I think you thought with the new person,
Yes, we actually have somebody doing the work with printing, giveaways kind of thing. So yeah, great. That was what we were
Just
anticipating.
curious.
Yep.
So we're running a little bit over budget on that this year anyway.
Yeah, we're front loaded. You would be surprised how much giveaway cows cost. So,
It might not be that high when it comes out.
right. Yeah, and they've been watching that one pretty closely.
Just curious about the big drop in postage. Any reason?
Nothing deliberate. I'm wondering if it's, as we got away from fines and fees, if we've had to stop mailing the people at home, it could be that, but nothing intentional.
We're around 4,500 for 2 years, and
Yeah.
then it's dropping down. We're estimating more like 2,500. So it's got a big drop.
Yeah.
Are we leasing a new piece of equipment?
Release the copiers. Which line are you?
Oh, wait, no, I was,
Be a 5041.
I was looking at okay, maybe I'm misreading. Oh, the equipment furniture, or just, never mind.
Staff development is what make that money well spent.
Yeah, and it's something that we're actually trying to get more staff to take advantage of. It's, a little bit of a challenge to get people to get away to do conferences or do webinars or whatnot, but it's something that we want to, as people on board, we encourage them to continue learning. And that goes towards the one big training event we do every year, which is typically late summer, or no, excuse me, early summer.
Well, and looking back on staff development, it looks like it's something we've been consistently under budget. Where
I know last year when we met, Nate kind of said that there was a need for that. And he wanted to, build it up and everything. And again, it was kind of, because of everything that was going on, I think he thought it would be beneficial. And probably hasn't kicked it yet. It would be nice.
Yeah, we were very intentional in making that money available, and now the next step is getting people to take advantage of it.
And I remember this being a discussion in negotiations with management too, because the old contracts had said they had funding to go to, I think, 2 events or something.
And that that adds up very quickly.
Super quick.
You take one flight to California to the West Coast and
staff improvement, if we're at full staff, or we still 4,000?
yeah, probably not, especially, recruiting some positions is more expensive than, some of the other positions. So if we're at full staff and we maintain that level, it probably comes back down to a prior year's number.
Want to tweak it down a little bit or just?
I think we can, because 4,000 is pretty generous. If we even just brought it back down to 25, the previous year's budget, that'd be fine.
If there was a thought that now that you had a human resource person, we would. Okay, but what did you say, 25-ish?
Yeah. And that's how we've got its budget.
Do that. Or 2,500.
We're recruiting really hard with that kind of budget. It's NIL money.
Budget need to be passed next week to go, or it's gonna be asked to be passed in April.
So we do need to schedule a public hearing for the budget. And I think it has to be passed after the public hearing. Is that the correct order of events?
Well, it has to be to the school district by a certain date to get on the ballot, and I didn't know if that was between like before or after the April meeting.
I thought it was before for some
I did
reason,
too.
but I don't know for sure.
Which would mean that we have to pass it next Thursday.
Well, how how
We
comfortable?
usually in the past tried to get it to the board so they had some time to absorb and look at it before we actually. Yeah, rest of it, so.
So Pete, the date probably is the same date that the,
It's April 21st.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when is the
You know,
April?
it's perfect.
I was just
I
asking,
believe it's after that.
well, it's probably against that date. That would be the third date.
That's usually what I mean.
Yeah, our meeting is the 24th.
Otherwise, they have to, you know, because it would be the 17th, except that's a school vacation week. So it's,
Oh, do we push it back?
yeah, because the week of the 14th to the 18th is a school vacation week.
What we were just discussing, there's apparently Superintendent's Day next week. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to hurry you guys along. I mean, a special meeting can be called, but I don't think that's like anybody's most desirable option.
Well, I mean, I will just say that so far, I mean, last year it seemed like we were tweaking it up and down and all over the place. And in my mind, he probably knew that I was going to get this in at least once. It's kind of like a water tank. It's, you push down on this and something else. It's just like you're just shifting it from almost to one to another, basically. So I'm actually somewhat encouraged that, there's a few things here that we can look at and maybe tweak a bit, but I don't think it was an all out, let's change every line.
I don't think there's a lot of opportunity. Like you get down to 2,714 hours left over at the end, and you're running on fumes.
Yeah, I mean, by far, it kind of, just dwarfs everything else as far as like the drivers here, this is the increase in the payroll.
Yeah.
Associated insurance expense.
And
That's it's dominating the change in the budget here.
in interest, I did a pretty elaborate calculation. I took the cash at the end of December and figured out, well, we'll get this much more in the levy, we'll spend this much. We'll get next levy on this month. We'll spend, the big expenditure is the retirement contribution, which is a big chunk, like 300 grand that comes out. All at once. And then I tweaked down the interest rates. I mean, the last I knew, we're still expected for the rates to drop a little bit, although they don't seem to be, dropping as quickly as I had thought a year ago or something. So that's why I budgeted a little bit less, just to be cautious about that.
What are they right?
We're getting about 4.2% on the last 4.2.
On the last CDs? Like, on the,
These were close on the intra-fire.
On the intra- yeah.
It was four. No, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of.
I mean,
I'm thinking of another
I'm looking at my
organization.
working part right now just to see what ours are at.
Sorry, I'm thinking of the last fire department.
But I
report
agree
did,
that-
But,
Conservative.
at 4.15, I think actually the intra-fire was, so. And the rates were, I think the last CD was right around that basically that we got.
Salaries and benefit, is 77%.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
You know, the expenses are commensurate with that.
So if you just look quick, if you look at, you know, the increase in payroll is 92,000. You add on the health insurance, it's another 30,000, and so we're already up over 120,000. And the total difference in, that's, you know, the reserves, you know, we're down to 120,000 on our reserves. I mean, so that right there kind of, you know, everything else is just little tweaks, you know, balancing out a little bit more here, a little bit less here, all that, you know, but basically the difference in the extra we had last year to what we have this year is basically all accounted for by the payroll increase.
and I guess that's why when you look in the past, it's like, it's been a bigger reserve and everything. And I don't know, by the time we get to next year, it'll probably be closer and everything because you're probably gonna have the same trend with salaries and everything. So I don't know how far our contract goes out, but
2028 for some of them.
yeah, so I mean, if we have the similar increases, you know, the reserve could be pretty much. It would be close.
I think in next year, we're gonna have some serious problems with this thing in the tax cap.
You do or don't?
I do, I mean, at the end of the day, as you said, just projecting numbers out and it's going to,
Yeah.
it's gonna come right in there at it.
Well, the tax was 2.5%. Yeah, I thought it was a good budget. I mean, it's not like we're. Yeah, I think that providing a service to the community, and I think it's a robust budget. I've just never used that word before, so.
Good job. Good work, all.
Straight from Mike.
I mean,
that's not easy.
So I think the things that we're gonna look at was workers' compensation, just to see about that. Did we think on the attorney fees, we wanted to cut it a little bit, or just leave them the same, or
We have 25,000.
we have 30 in total?
I think we can reduce that with confidence
The 25, that would be the 20 plus 5 extra.
or unanticipated.
I'll be in Friday, I'll look at the auditor things, there should be some folders around.
They just did a huge tax jump on the retainer and they shouldn't, or a huge jump last year. They shouldn't be doing that this year.
Yeah.
That's. Computer replacement, we'll look at the history and maybe talk to, I say Sean, but no, that's right.
That's correct.
Catching on, you know, after a few years.
Everyone else, the guy who's taking so many years.
That's true. In fact, I can remember his name for 8 hours or whatever is an accomplishment. And then the
Staff recruitment.
staff recruitment, it's up to 25. Okay. Do we want to do that? Maybe send it out on. Have Pete and I make some changes and send it out to the full board on Friday or something?
Is Amy planning to try and do the packet on Friday?
She is.
So we need to have a meeting, a special meeting of the board to review the budget. We did last year.
It's Tony's committee and you're the one leading the budget charge, so.
By the 21st.
So what's the, do we have to, or we're supposed to have a public
hearing.
Do we have to approve it and then a public hearing or?
That was the question.
I think, and last year we just did the public hearing, like a half an hour before the meeting that we passed it. Because I remember,
And nobody showed up, so.
and yeah, because Nate had a whole little presentation and they wanted to do it anyway, and they did, and it was really just for us.
Yeah. So, maybe we can do that again then. No, we can't. After, right?
I mean,
Unless you try to make it the next.
for next week, I think you only need to notify, like 5 days in advance or something.
Let me double check that.
It's definitely not more than 7 though.
Right.
So I think we put this out on Friday, and give notice that this is the proposed budget that's going to be brought to the board on Thursday, and we'll have a public comment period immediately before the board meeting. Try to do that.
That just committee have to approve it before we do that.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess in theory, ideally, we want this committee to have approved and send with the board. I mean, I think we're more or less on board with this week, so there's a couple questions that we have. So the question is, which of those do we need more information on?
Would it make sense, I don't know how complicated of a recommendation the committee can make, but would it make sense to direct George and I to see if we can reduce those areas that we had questions about that were high, and any reduction goes into the reserve? And then it's approved with that caveat? Is that too complex for
So I mean, most of them are clear. We said we're going to drop the attorney's fees from 30 to 25. We're going to drop the staff improvement from 4,000 to 2,500. I'm not exactly sure what was
Then
that.
you're gonna put
Computer
the
replacement.
actual tax levy in, right? Yeah.
change the actual tax levy?
On the computer replacement, did we know exactly what we were doing with that? We
were curious.
Information.
We need information about why it was so high.
That one we're not sure about.
If you don't want to.
Workers' comp, we will just want to look at this if there's any some loading of it. I don't know that one. But probably other than the things that we already changed, I mean, if it changes 10,000, that would probably be a lot. I mean, it's like we're pretty close.
It can also come into the board meeting without the committee formally having approved it. It just will need a motion and a second.
Yeah, I just wondered, does somebody have to approve something before we're kind of publishing out to the public as like, here's our proposed budget that you're gonna have your comment on?
Yeah.
It's not a budget that actually anybody else.
That-
But you have to have a meeting. You can't do it any other way, right? In a committee, can you do it remotely?
I think, if we needed the committee to do something, we could kind of have a, brief 5-minute committee meeting immediately before the full board meeting to kind of sign off on whatever the budget. But the question is, do we need the committee to have voted or decided on something before we put it out to the public?
I think you can vote to move forward with it pending the changes that were.
Approve a not to exceed budget, which.
Yeah,
You can take.
I get that, because why don't we put we can make the changes that we already decided on, we'll make those changes. But the ones that are up in the air, the computer replacement and the workers' comp, we just leave these numbers as they are here, and we can make a last minute change next Thursday on those ones if we get more information that says it's warranted.
Well, we also have a meeting on Tuesday.
Or either,
So we do it on technically on a Tuesday.
I would just send it out and then when it goes up for board discussions, somebody makes the friendly amendment that we, with more information, change that.
Yeah, so maybe we approve this as our kind of tentative proposed budget, with the acknowledging that, we're, it's subject to change when we get some more information on those couple of points. Always subject.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So when the board, you have to get public comments. I don't know if it has to be officially approved at that point, because in theory, we should take into factor the comments of all the people who show up.
It's
Probably
just,
change things, but-
Yeah.
and nobody will probably show up, but still, I think it maintains the integrity of the process. Another thing I usually don't say publicly, but I happen to put that in an email. Something else.
Yeah, I mean, I would say go ahead and then. Tentatively. Through these numbers, and if we can lower those two. Places with more information, we'll do that.
I think Pete and I'm gonna be here Friday morning, so the workers' comp, we can look at the other things. We can pull the detail out of the general ledger and figure that out. And holy cripes, I don't want to drag this out to a full hour, but I want to follow through.
We can do it on the approval right now then, or we just.
Subject to the,
Probably, you're right, like, I think we vote.
I think you can vote on, you know, that you're going to recommend this budget pending the changes to the board.
Or we can wait till Tuesday, right, to make sure.
okay,
Well, it's just, do we want to have something approved from this committee before we, because we got to publish something out to the public when we're telling them this is the budget that we're proposing for you to comment on.
Okay, that's right.
but we skip that Tuesday, or is the public meeting gonna be Thursday?
Yeah.
We would have,
I would just say we
Friday.
voted out today.
Okay.
And then, you know, I mean, because we can always make changes later, but at least
Yeah.
we're approving something to go out to the public, knowing that those two lines might, you know, change the other line, but at least get this out. That's what, I don't know. Seems to make sense to do that.
And when we send it out, we can say something like that when we send it out with the board package. Just that, you know, there's a couple numbers that may change, but I think it would be good if they had it for the weekend. Weekend's always a good time to look at that.
or should they hold draft on top of it until it's formally approved? Not
And I
literally.
can do that. Ted.
I didn't mean literally.
Workers' comp. No. Replacement.
Yeah.
Be for the public comment next Thursday, and you would prepare something like you did last year that basically sort of summarizes the budget.
Like an overview, yeah.
And I don't even get too in depth with it based on how many people showed up.
And you can do less, but what I'll also do is this will roll up, all the line numbers roll up into one summary, into a one-page summary of this whole thing, and then you can look at that, and everything in gray comes onto that, and then we'll still have this detail behind it, so that's what we did last year.
Is that what we did last year? Okay.
Yeah,
The
you
roll
may
up,
have done something, I don't even remember.
it's the roll up that the public sees, yeah.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, when we see what that.
Your cruise or something?
Yeah. Oh, well, so I'll be here next week. I do not believe I'll be here for the April meeting. What?
Are you going on another cruise?
Yeah, actually two cruises back to back. And I was explaining, but we'll do that for the public record that we had one scheduled, friend passed away at age 63, so we booked another one. Which sounds odd, but it's like, it just, it kind of wakes you up a little bit. So the other thing that we don't have to decide today, but just to put it, to get it out there, I sent drafts of the financial statements out. We're up to June 30th, 2022 for a whole myriad of reasons that Mike probably knows as much as anybody. And I mean, we kind of drove the process in terms of booking the whole project and everything. And we had good results because of that. And, you know, we took care of a lot of things that people had questions internally about. And I think, you know, did good due diligence on it. I guess now, normally we have the auditors make a presentation, and the auditor asked me, it's like, I said, you know, we'll probably have you come and do a presentation. she asked some question like, well, what's your objective in doing that? And I guess it made me think about it. It's like, it's 3 years behind the time. I can tell, we can go over, I think I put in the email, there was a couple of small issues that have been resolved. And I hate to say, there's no management here that was here during the time of the audit, not that, the board still has a responsibility to review it. I guess there's nothing that out of the ordinary on the statement, so we'll have to decide if you do want them to do a presentation to, normally it would be to this, well, normally it would be to the audit committee, but I believe this replaced that, and whether you think it would be worth, listening to that. I mean, I could do a summary of the biggest change is accounting for the building project. And because we accounted for the building project, we picked up an extra maybe 125,000 in depreciation expense. And we took a loss of about $250,000 on some disposal of assets, things that we had on our books that when we did the building project, I had to wipe them out, whether it was the parking lot, a whole bunch of things. I have a schedule of that. But it really doesn't matter because those are all non-cash items because they were already paid for. So it didn't affect cash at all. It was just, truing up the books and everything. So, and the depreciation, basically out of our contribution of the 1.4 million, I believe, we did have to start depreciating that. And a lot of it was equipment, so it wasn't 30-year depreciation.
That depreciation is not in these numbers.
It is not. So these, what we do, I guess, depreciation, what we should budget for, and we sort of do through the reserve, is buying the assets, not depreciating, because the levy really doesn't have to pay for non-cash items, basically. So we should make sure that there's money to buy new assets, but the depreciation really isn't paid for out of ongoing levies. So it's really we present cash-based financial statements for interim
Think of one
purposes.
thing. So we did do it correctly this year, and that's why the interest income is separated, correct? That we didn't base the tax levy on.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
that just popped back in my head
there
when
was
we,
something odd last year when we did.
Yeah.
There's been,
We overthought it, and we were fortunate this time that George was working on the budget while I was working on the tax staff, so we were siloed.
Perfect.
so that's something to think about. We don't have to decide tonight if we want to have it presented. If you feel more comfortable having them presented, we could do that. And I think that we're thinking about what has to be done for the new audits and everything. And we were talking this morning, and we basically said we changed payroll systems, and we realized we're going to have certain reports for the last 2 years from the old system. So we're going to work on that. That was kind of a good catch that we figured out this morning.
What are our prospects for catching up to where we're supposed to be on the audits?
I think if we hire somebody and really work on it, and I worked a little, but I didn't even talk to you about it, but there, a couple of meetings ago, we talked about some of the differences that haven't been reconciled. And I started looking at a couple of them, and it's like, I think I got rid of like a few $1,000s worth of differences pretty easily. They just, were in different accounts and things. But I think the auditor's concern is there were delays in getting information to them, and they just want to make sure that before they commit people, that we're committed to get them the information on time. So, I think that with a new person starting, I don't think week one you can say, got to get this done in the next month. But I think with a little bit of help and everything, I'm hoping that they will agree to do 2 years simultaneously, which isn't going to save money because they still have to do full audits or anything. But hopefully it'll just sort of get everybody everybody focus. Do you think that's fair to
I
say?
think that's, yeah, and we're hoping to have the new person in by mid to late April, so that gives them.
Yeah.
Else get their feet under them for fiscal year terms, and then within 90 days, if we hire a qualified
Yeah.
person, they should know how to help with it.
I mean, I don't think it's not an extraordinarily complicated audit. I mean, you look at some audits, but in healthcare, and I worked in healthcare for almost my entire career. And you have to estimate accounts receivable at month end, and you have to figure out what you're gonna be paid, and, look at subsequent cash receipts. I mean, here you get, it's, a levy, some revenue from the copier and some other things. I mean, there's just not estimates. So it should not be that complicated. So hoping in my lifetime, which, could be quick. I do think we have to get caught up though, because I know that our statements were foiled last year, and I think we gave them what we could, so we didn't have everything, and we didn't hear too much about that afterwards, but I don't know if we have to go back and do anything with that. So.
Do we want to vote on that budget or not?
Vote on voting out to approve the tentative audit and review of workers' comp and computer replacement costs. All in favor?
I think I can go. I think I don't count towards the quorum, but I think I can go.
I don't remember how that works.
Is your ex officio or something?
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Sorry if I pushed you guys to do it faster, but probably better that than have a special meeting. So,
You don't like so much, we should next one.
you love them.
Got a lot of